Hi, everybody. Today is July 6th, 2026, and I've been posting these videos as a form of therapy in my recovery from the trauma of watching my little brother, Paul Kieran, 64, with Down syndrome, be locked away by the British Columbia New Democratic Party government, David Eby as leader, Nikki Sharma as Attorney General, and Sheila Malcolmson as the minister responsible for Paul's care. They locked Paul away when I complained to the Burnaby RCMP after I discovered a secret and what I alleged to be a fraudulent and forged power of attorney the government created to give Paul the COVID-19 shot in February of 2021. I didn't find out about this document, which I allege is a forgery, and I know that because I taught Paul to print the only word that he could ever print or read, his first name. It took me about a year as a little girl, but I didn't find out about it for a year. It's supposed to be where all of his family members, and he had 6 siblings living at the time, are supposed to be given notice, and it's supposed to be posted online, but it was all done in secret. So they locked Paul away for 588 days, and then he had a stroke and he survived for 10 days. I believe that the person the government appointed as Paul's guardian, my 82-year-old Catholic nun sister 4,000 kilometers away, who had only met Paul on a few occasions over the course of his life, and who did not understand his speech or communication. She'd never moved to be closer to him or moved him to be close to her. So he was locked away in his group home in Burnaby, as I said, for 588 days. After he had a stroke, then the nun's lawyers, she had 2 law firms working for her, Charles Gibson in Ottawa and Borden, Ladner, Gervais in Vancouver with Casey Deanshaw. I estimate the Catholic Church spent more than $2 million on her legal representation. I don't think she knew that the document was a fraud and a forgery, but until I challenged it, then she knew, but she didn't care, and she did everything as the Catholic Church tends to do to uphold misdeeds by its clergy. So once Paul had a stroke, and then I was allowed to visit him because then I couldn't get an authentic sample of his signature. And he appeared to be recovering remarkably well. He sat up, he grabbed a book from my hand. He squeezed my hand so tight when I said my name. At that point, I hadn't seen him for 588 days, but the nun only let me visit him for 10 minutes a day. When she could see he wasn't going to die after 2 days, she flew in from Ontario, and she put him in a room where it was only her and him. While I was waiting out in the hallway of the hospital for my 10-minute per day visit, I got a call from a staff sergeant at the Burnaby RCMP, and he told me that they had been ordered by the Ottawa Oversight Agency to reopen the investigation into the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. The constable who had interviewed me when I made the complaint said that she was going to get a search warrant for the original document with Paul's signature on it, but she didn't do that. She just tipped off the group home that I had complained, and I got a letter from the lawyer for the government saying I would never see my brother again. I went to court. I did everything I could dream of. I was trained as a psychologist and worked as a psychologist for the government of British Columbia in the 80s. And then to help people with disabilities, I went to law school. I was the first single mother in history to graduate from law school in British Columbia. I then became a federal prosecutor, prosecuting federal offenses like the Controlled Substances Act and the Criminal Code. After that, I was hired by Carrie Lynn Finlay, the new leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia, and I went into family law, and I practiced family law for 23 years until I became disabled in an accident. But during all of that time, I visited with my little brother at will. My 2 sisters, then living sisters, and I and my mother had cared for Paul in our home, so weekends and holidays. The nun never cared for him or contributed anything to his upkeep. So after Paul went into the hospital, as I said, and the nun found out that the RCMP had reopened the investigation into the fraudulent forged document, he had to die. And she ordered his treating doctor, Dr. Michael Baker, to withhold all of his medical supports. He had had a ventilator and an oxygen mask that was taken away, and he appeared to me to be sedated to death. So when I walked into the room after I had asked a judge to suspend her guardianship pending the RCMP investigation, she met me at the door of his hospital room, and she said, she wouldn't look me in the eye, so I knew she was lying. She said, "Say goodbye to Paul, he's dying." But he appeared to me to have already been killed. He lay still on the hospital bed, and his eyes were wide open and fixed. His pupils were dilated and fixed. So I believe that she had ordered the doctor to kill him, to do what's called medical assistance in dying on him. So in Canada, if you don't know, you must educate yourself. This horrific change in the law of Canada that is astounding to me as a former prosecutor and lawyer, that the law of murder was changed in 1976 to abolish capital punishment, hanging for civilians, and then in 1999, hanging or capital punishment. So the Parliament of Canada passed a law that the government, could not kill Canadians, even for first-degree murder, which is the most serious offense in the criminal code. And then in 1999, they extended that to military staff, so that even military staff couldn't be executed for murder. And I mean, it wasn't long ago the people were hanged in Canada. My grandfather and great-grandfather were lawyers, then judges. But when my grandfather was a lawyer, two of his clients were hanged after a trial before a jury and a judge, an Indigenous man and an immigrant, and he was devastated. But what happened in 2015 that I've been making videos about really since 2021, since it first came to my attention, is that the Supreme Court of Canada had a case brought before it by a non-governmental agency called Death with Dignity. And they put forward a woman who had already died named Kay Carter. And she had been suffering, she had what's called spinal stenosis. And they put her forward saying that she should be allowed to be killed by a doctor. The Supreme Court of Canada had already considered this issue of euthanasia or mercy killing about 20 years ago, and they said no, it was not in the public interest for doctors to be killing their patients or people, that it was against medical practice, or it was medical malpractice for doctors to kill their patients. But there are people that really wanted to bring this about in Canada, and I believe, my intuition is that it's the Communist Party of China wanted to kill Canadian citizens because they want to take over Canada, as they have want to take over a lot of places and have done so successfully. So I believe that it was Chinese Communist Party of China funds were behind this Death with Dignity. But in any event, strangely, bizarrely, the Supreme Court of Canada panel anonymously and unanimously reversed their earlier decision, which I don't believe they're allowed to do unless there is a significant change in the law, and there hadn't been. But they said that Canadians have a constitutional charter right to be killed by the government. If you can imagine anything more bizarre. And since that decision, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada panel that made this decision, reversing itself and allowing doctors to execute extrajudicially Canadians. Her name was Beverly McLaughlin. And almost immediately after making this decision, she then went and worked for the Communist Party of China in Hong Kong for 6 years, which is very bizarre and very suspicious. And many people said it showed that it demonstrated a conflict of interest for her to work for a regime that is known for killing, executing political prisoners and harvesting their organs. And the organs of the Canadians that are killed by this extrajudicial execution by lethal injection, which the government calls MAiD, with their propaganda word, medical assistance in dying. It's a made-up propaganda word. You'll see even people that oppose it use this made-up propaganda word. So you can start by never using that word. So I've been making these videos every day, just trying to, at this point, I mean, I don't want to research it. I don't want to know about it either. It's horrible. It's the worst thing in the world that's happening right now. And as of Canada Day, I warned you that as of Canada Day 2026, July 1st, 100,000 innocent, vulnerable Canadians would have been executed extrajudicially by lethal injection in Canada. And actually, the number was 103,000. So it was more than my estimation. And 17,772 human beings, Canadian citizens, 96% white, Canadian-born citizens were executed extrajudicially by lethal injection in just 2025. And in contrast, the United States of America executed by lethal injection 43 people. Someone's pointed out to me that there is euthanasia in in California, and there's, I believe, 12 states have adopted euthanasia, but it's rare. It's relatively rare. And in 2025, only 3,500 people were executed by the state by lethal injection and not by doctors in California, because that goes against the Hippocratic Oath. The first term of the Hippocratic Oath is first, do no harm. And obviously it's not, and the word medical is derived from the Greek verb to heal, and you don't heal anyone by killing them. So Canada has killed 103,000 innocent, vulnerable people, many under suspicious circumstances where there's people who've changed their mind, and the staff of the hospital just went and found another person to sign off. All it takes is a signature of any two medical professionals, any doctor, any nurse. It's not a sworn affidavit, it's a form. So for the government to hang somebody with capital punishment before 1976 would take a trial before a jury of a unanimous verdict from 12 jurors, all done under the oversight of a judge. The reason I call this extrajudicial execution by lethal injection is there's no legal involvement whatsoever. There have people who have gone, a woman named Miriam Lancaster went into Vancouver General Emergency last year, and the first thing that the doctor, a young female doctor, walked up to her and said, "We've decided to offer you MAiD." And people don't really give this a lot of thought. They think it's somebody who's in agony, terminally ill. No. You just practically anybody can be killed now. And with practically you don't need to have a reasonably foreseeable death. It's completely off the charts. And they're already calculating how much money they're going to save by killing all these people. But the point I wanted to make today, and I know I probably go on too long, 45 people were killed today, by the way, extrajudicially. Like I said, all it takes. And there's doctors that like killing people, make no mistake. There's every variety of person under the sun that can become a medical professional. The worst serial killer in history was a doctor in the United Kingdom named Harold Shipman, who killed 250 of his patients. And the worst female serial killer in Canadian history was a nurse named Elizabeth Wetlaufer. It's a nightmare. You don't want to look at it. Just like the people who lived in the little villages around Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen and Dachau. The air was full of the smell of burning bodies, but they didn't want to admit what was going on was going on. But I'm telling you, it's going on. I'm a disabled person. I was injured in an accident in 2008, but I have eyes to see and I can read. And when I was practicing law, I was a successful lawyer. People say to me, your numbers, your statistics must be wrong. No, they're not wrong. And what the government's now doing is they're ordering doctors to put down the cause of the person's ailment and not that they died. The cause of death is not that they were given a lethal injection of a cocktail of three drugs, that it's the same cocktail given to death row inmates to kill them in the United States. And it paralyzes your lungs so that you can't call out for help and you drown in your own fluids. But the point I wanted to make today is I see all kinds of videos against what's going on in Canada. It's the only country in recession in the G20. We have the most horrible, evil little piece of shit Prime Minister Mark Carney, who before he became Prime Minister had 32 citizenships and 3 bloody passports. He was a citizen of Ireland and all of the European Union countries. He was a citizen of the United Kingdom and all of those countries and a citizen of Canada. He was a failed bank director. You can ask Liz Truss, who was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who said that she can't believe that Canada has elected him. Well, all you elbows up type that didn't like Donald Trump, look what you've got now. You've got a mini Hitler wannabe who's doing euthanasia and eugenics on the Canadian population. So the point that I wanted to make today is that I know that Carney bought 9 submarines from Germany today. He just spent $150 million getting Canada into the Eurovision Song Contest. He has spent $2.5 billion propping up his friends in the condo crash in Vancouver, so that he's propping up the prices so that young people cannot buy these properties, even though the bottom has fallen out of the market. He's the worst leader of any country in the world right now. The worst. And people complain about this, about Alberta's separatism. But what I'm telling you is let's start by recriminalizing euthanasia, the killing of innocent, vulnerable Canadians. We've got along without killing people. The species Neanderthals and Homo sapiens got along without killing people for 40,000 years of human civilization. Let's start by recriminalizing the killing of Canadians. I'm not saying let people live in pain. Pain can be managed. My mother died of the worst form of cancer there is, and she was not in pain. Her pain was managed right up until she passed. And I asked her. So pain can be managed. But let's stop. Let's recriminalize. Let's go back, turn back the clock to January of 2015, when it was first-degree murder to kill people. Let's start with that. And I guarantee you the recession and everything else will fall away. I love you all. Take care.